So the 911 laser SIG, and Ed's going to talk about his laser and CNC combination. So now back to you, Ed.
Okay, thank you, Alan. So what I did was I started a few months back with getting a CNC machine, and I've been wanting to add a laser to it. So I started looking around to see what lasers were available for it, and there are several options, and a lot of people, like I mentioned Doug a minute ago, would probably get a laser and figure it all out themselves. But I was looking for something a little bit more turnkey. And so what I did was I went ahead and got an opt laser, OPT laser, from a company in Poland, actually. And the reason I did is because it's a really nicely implemented solution. So Alan, if you could spotlight my phone, then I'll use the camera on that to kind of show what I'm looking at.
Ed, which of the cameras?
Got it.
Okay. So it's perhaps this one right here. Okay.
It's got, you can see the, there you go. That's good.
Wait, can I just make an observation? You have a Shapeoko XL.
I do.
Means a much bigger etching area as a consequence.
Yeah, it's, I believe, 32 by 33. No, excuse me, 16 by 33. The XXL is 32 by 33.
You're having XXL dreams when you say 32 by 32.
Yeah. So anyhow, this is the thing. Now, so what I had to do is I had to figure out how to attach this, because it didn't come with an assembly instruction. So I complained about not having a manual, and now they've got me writing a manual. So we can share some stuff if you want to. But I got to show you what I think is really cool about this is that the laser, and Howard Beam has one of these too. The laser unit, the laser head just comes right off. It's mounted with magnets, and it's got those contacts there. So it snaps on real easy when you want to use the laser. And when you want to put it away in a drawer and keep it clean, what you can do is you can take this cover and you can slap that on there, and that'll keep everything real clean. And you don't have to worry about the laser constantly being jarred when you're using it as a true CNC.
Ed, is there any place in the entire range of travel where that protrusion on the left bumps into anything?
I haven't seen it yet, and I have initialized the machine, so it's gone all the way over at least once. So I haven't seen a problem with that yet.
Okay, good.
And I haven't gotten confirmation from them that I put this in the right place yet, but it's the only place I could find that I could attach it. So we're going with it for right now. The lens that's on there, I got an extra lens too, but the lens that's on there is a 3-element lens, which they say suffers, a little bit of loss of power because of the 3-element lens, but it makes up for it in that it focuses a really much tighter beam. And so what you wind up with is a lot more power for the area that the beam occupies. So it'll be a very thin cut and a very powerful cut. It's a 6-watt blue diode laser. I have not actually cut anything with it yet, because I haven't got the wiring all figured out. I do have this lead that goes up here, and I've got it run through the cable chase. Comes out that end and goes over to where the controller is. But the settings where they have showed to hook up the wiring, my circuit board is different than the one they showed. So I don't have that yet. Here is the control box that I've got to mount on the side of the machine. And you see it has a key, which is kind of nice. That key has to be on in order to be able to arm the laser. And it has status indicator lights. There's also a status indicator light on the side of the laser here. So when it's in a state that it's armed and can be fired, this LED will be on. So you'll know right away that there's power to it and a potential. And so that's basically where I am with it at this point.
I think the blue beam, the what would you call it? The blue sword that comes down is a good indicator on these types of lasers. for whether they're on or off. That's what, right? You guys
Well,
have
yeah,
seen.
but this is, that light comes on when it's in a state that it can be fired. So if you send it then a control from your Gerbil controller, LightBurn or some other thing, to turn it on, it will turn on. If that light's not on, then it won't turn on.
So it's an indicator of being armed, not necessarily firing.
Right.
You know, I remember when I saw one of these on the side of Howard's machine.
Yes.
That when he demoed it, the cuts were so much more deep and dark than what we would have expected for similar wattages on Artur. And so I guess I'm wondering, I think Artur probably exaggerates, and it's on the input wattage as opposed to the output wattage. Do you
That's
know
my
what
understanding.
Say that again, please.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
This 6 watt is at the upper edge of what's even maximum available. They don't get much higher than that. I mean, our 15 watts are really, what are they, like 4 something? Yeah. So
and
that's
20 was more like 7, or not even 7, 5 something.
right. So the 6 watt is pretty kick butt. And with that 3 element lens, the other benefit of that, besides that tighter focus, is that it's symmetrical. Whereas with the single lens, you will, because the higher wattage you go, the more elements there are, and it's basically a line of high powered laser elements. So that's why we get a line. And I don't know if you guys have seen some of the stuff, if you go in, say, I forget which axis, just say it's in the X axis, you end up with a wider cut than in the Y.
Yeah. Hey, Doug, if I remember correctly, when we were looking very closely at the shape of the blue laser beam on the Artur, most of us were seeing an oval or a line as opposed to a point.
Right.
And I think what I'm hearing you say is that partially that has to do with the fact that we have a single element lens, and maybe what Ed was telling us about having a 3 element lens means that they're able to maybe focus the diode lasers into a much more focused point and therefore get better results. I'm interpreting what you guys are saying, but does that sound like what you're saying?
Yeah. More power.
Yeah, I think that's how I understand it.
Yeah,
Okay.
More power to a smaller point means you burn more.
Yeah.
And you'll get, your designs will look more closely to what you engineered it, to be, as far as the, your kerf, because if you're putting pieces together, a kerf's a big deal and stuff. So it's all around good stuff.
Do you remember, Ed, what Howard would have said was the thickness of material you could expect to cut? Because those of us with Artur sort of throw our hands up and say, well, it's not really for cutting. But
I don't remember offhand, but I may have some of that in the manual I'm working on. What I did was I copied and pasted a manual that they had for X-Carve, and I've started editing it for Shapeoko.
Yeah. Well, but the idea that you need to cut when you have a laser mounted on a CNC, which is all about cutting, seems a little bit counterintuitive. Like,
well, okay, but
you just need to have it as an etcher. Maybe
but if you want to cut really fine detail on a CNC, you can go down to a 16th inch cutter or something like that, or you can get the corners of things with a V-bit, but there's nothing like that straight laser line going down if you want to cut out little tiny pieces that are going to fit together.
Well and good, but when you're cutting for precise dimensions and you're using an end mill on a CNC, you really get those dimensions. As Doug was talking about earlier, the kerf that comes from laser always means there's a little bit of extra space. And so I'm only thinking out loud right now. I'd never had this thought prior to this evening, whenever I've seen somebody having a laser on a CNC, I think to myself, well, it's diode, not CO2. Therefore, it doesn't have the oomph to really do good cutting. And I just realized, why do you need to cut? You've got a CNC right there.
Well, I'm thinking for the square corners in, an inside cut.
The inside?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That's
Ed, how do you, so you've got a big router and a little laser. What's your focal length on that laser? Is it 6 inches up the, so you have to pull out or,
No, this extends, this focal length coincidentally extends to about the bottom of the sweepy dust brush. And I could, of course, pull that off. I have a tool in there because I have the bit runner, bit setter, I mean. And so I have the bit runner too, but so I have to have a tool in there. But it runs, it's about even with the bottom of the bit now, so.
okay, it's a bad parallax thing. It looks like the router's like 3 inches farther down than that.
Yeah, that's just the way the camera is set. If I bring it down here, you might get a little bit better of a feel.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Still looks pretty good distance.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah, so like I said, that was the only place I could find to attach the thing. I haven't gotten confirmation from them that that's the correct place.
But you got to think of it this way, though. You don't want it. So if you have a short focus, you're pretty much going to be creating a V cut with your laser. You really, generally, you're going to want a little bit more length to your focus so that the cut is not so, you don't have those angles.
Yeah. And the length of that tight beam that I was talking about, Doug, according to the manual, is supposed to be 8 millimeters.
8 millimeters?
That's pretty short.
So once it gets to a tight beam, it stays tight for 8 millimeters.
Okay.
Oh, I see.
So
theoretically, you could cut through an 8 millimeter piece without getting any wider.
Yep.
So it looks, whenever I see a piece of nicely milled metal, and I see earth magnets to have it clamping in so nicely, and then there's a metallic cover to it, I'm thinking to myself, that's not cheap.
Well, you could make that with the Carbide 3D CNC.
Yeah, you could. And I think that some of the parts were probably made on a CNC. Yeah, it was, I think it's $840.
Oh, wow. Okay.
With everything you need, theoretically, to make it work.
So if it's hanging out to the front and the side, does the software compensate for that, where that position is? Because
I haven't done it yet, but I would think you zero the laser separately from zeroing your bit. And so, but if you were trying to cut and etch something at the same time, you could probably get away with some sort of a macro that would, you could figure out what that offset is pretty easily.
So it gives you the ability, your software gives you the ability of cutting with the CNC and etching at the same time?
Well, no, it would be same setup. It would be two different operations, because I'm planning on using LightBurn for the etching and carbide motion or something for the CNC.
Well, it should be just a tool path. It's just another tool path. And the nice thing about it, if you get your laser software to output compatible G-code, then you can basically do just what you're talking about. You could have your rough cut tool path, your fine cut, your smoothing cut, and then your laser stuff all just brought up just like you normally would. That's kind of what I would want, is after doing this, you kind of want to basically just say, okay, here's my tool paths. Load, load, load.
Yeah, it's just another tool path. It's just, you have to re-zero it.
Yeah, there's that. But Ed, what software are you going to use to control the laser? Will it be your carbide motion, or will it be like something like LightBurn?
I'm planning on using LightBurn. but I'm open to other considerations. Like they said, you know, I could generate the G code in LightBurn, output it, and then load it as the next file in Carbide Create.
If I remember correctly, Howard wasn't able to use LightBurn. I can't remember why. Maybe it was his controller.
Well, I asked him once. I asked him about that, and I don't think he had tried LightBurn, but maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, this was from one of our videos that I seem to remember.
What's the controller board?
Well, it's a proprietary to Opt, I believe, Opt lasers.
So is it the proprietary board into the CNC controller? Is it parallel to it? What's the logic?
The controller board is right in here.
Okay.
And so that's one reason why they don't have to worry about the length of this cable, is because, you know, it's the controller board's right there. So this cable, they gave us, you know, lots of extra length on here in case you wanted to route it around something. You know, they were really very generous with that.
But where does it end up?
It goes through the I forget what you call these things, the chain tray or whatever.
Drag chain.
Drag chain. There you go. Yeah. It goes through the drag chain and comes out the left side.
And then, but the terminal ends of that, where do they go? Is
it this box? And I haven't mounted it yet.
Okay. And so where does the end of? So there's an input side.
The one on the left is from the laser head.
Okay.
On the right goes to the controller board in the CNC.
That's what I was asking about. Okay. And so do you know yet what the terminals are on the CNC controller that you're connecting to?
Yeah, I'm supposed
to remember a diagram you shared.
I'm supposed to connect to PWM and ground, and I haven't yet identified those on the PCB.
Okay.
So essentially, you want like a second spindle output. That's generally what the the spindle power is a PWM signal, right? So your Shapeoko. So essentially,
Doug, Doug, for those of the audience who aren't familiar with PWM, pulse width modulation, and how it's a digital way of sort of mimicking an analog signal, could you describe that real briefly?
Sure. Electricity, you've got, voltages, high and low. If you're talking about a 5 volt, you'd have 0, which is ground, and a 5 volt signal, which is high. If you were to turn an LED or a light on or a motor on, you would basically apply 5 volts, and that motor would come on fully. Now, since it's difficult to control voltages between 0 and 5, an easy way to do this is to go ahead and turn this thing on and off at a duty cycle of 50%. Say it's just using numbers, 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off. And you just keep repeating this, 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off. Essentially, you're putting in half the power that you were when you just left it on steady. And that will then vary your power. Well, you do this at a much quicker rate, at milliseconds. So it's going on, off, on, off, on, off. And essentially, you look at it as a pulse width that's just repeating. And by varying that pulse width, that varies the power to whatever device you're doing. And then that device reacts based on the power it's given.
If it's just digital, it's almost as though you were on think of an old volume control. It was either 0 or all the way on. That's kind of the way digital is, 0 or all the way on. What I understand Doug to be saying is that when you end up doing these pulses at certain intervals, you end up making it look like you're at 50% power or 30% power or 80% power. So you're mimicking an analog range within a digital context by pulsing at certain widths to make it look like it's a lower power level. Is that right, Doug?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So it's basically it's an average of the on time and the off time. So if you have it on 100%, you're at 100%. If you have it on and off at exactly the same amount, you're at 50%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And something in between for the others.
Yeah.
So this is good to know, because Ed was just talking about how the two connectors he's going to attach to in the CNC controller are ground, which is 0, and PWM, which is whatever it is. If it's 100% on, it's the 5 volts. If it's, as Alan was saying, half on, half off, then it looks like it's 50%. And so this is how you would get a variable signal to the laser, so it knew whether to do the full 6 watts, to do 3 watts, to do 4.5 watts, etc. So thank you, Doug. I just wanted to make sure that as we talked about PWM, people had a little bit of an understanding of what that meant.
Yeah, this is what our Artura does. The Artura laser sends a pulse width modulated signal up to the laser, and it basically varies the intensity based on that. The controller in the Artura is set up so it acts like a CNC, that the spindle control for the CNC firmware that's in the laser, the spindle speed is being varied by the G-code. If you looked at your G-code on your Artura and looked at your G-code for your CNC, you would see there's a similarity in the G3, or G3 is off, I think it is, or G2 or G3, I forget what the commands are, the G-code commands, but they're the same. So it would be interesting to see if this controller basically puts out the spindle pulse width onto this PWM. And then if that's the case, then essentially you just turn your spindle off and just run your CNC. You could run any of your CNC programs, and it would move and turn your laser on and off and vary the speed based on, So that's,
and if you didn't plan it, Ed, you could really make quite the mess.
Yes, well, I've been known to do that. Hey, Doug, one thing I was thinking that you'll really appreciate, because I know you've done a lot with your air control and everything, this fan on top is designed to not only cool the thing with the fins that it's got, but if you look underneath, you see that there are holes. I'll see if I can find out how to position this.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually directs that air movement down to keep the lens clean and cool.
Yeah.
I'll bet Doug likes that.
That's a good design, because laser, I forget where I was I was on a meeting the other day. Oh, no. I was actually looking at the video from the previous meeting on this. And Mark, I think it was, talked about cleaning his lenses because of the smoke and stuff. There was a conversation on the video about the smoke on that thing and the nozzle and trying to get a small amount of air through it. So yes, whenever you're making smoke or throwing dust up, you want to keep these lenses clean, because any of that dust right on the lens, when the laser hits it, it heats up and you can break and burn your lens.
So for those who are at all curious about why Ed made the comment that Doug would like the fan and the exhaust area below, we have a previous SIG meeting where Doug shows us his favorite hacks. I think it may have actually been called Favorite Auteur Hacks. You can find it in our discussion area and then watch the video. But Doug went to great lengths to make his Auteur do what he wanted it to do. And it's just kind of a fun look back on one of our previous sessions.
Well, I look at these things like, okay, what's that for? Like the fan. And on the Artura, I look at the fan and what's that for? That's for cooling us down. And then I realize, I look at it and I notice that all the fins are all exposed right underneath the fan, the fins running down the side. So essentially what's going to happen, the airflow is going to come through the top, and then the turbulence and stuff is just going to push the air right out. So you're essentially not using all your fins.
And you guided it.
And so, yeah, so I put a guide on there. What they did on that one is they basically pushed that, they let that air only go straight through. I ended up having to put sides on my fins, cooling fins, to basically direct it through, so it did the same thing.
Yep.
Just if people don't know, I think the best hacker in our community is Doug.
Definitely, definitely. When I bricked my Oturi, he resurrected it.
That's right. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
He's
a
a
fun
firmware,
learning
right?
experience.
Yeah.
So is there a calibration routine that comes with that laser, because it's a certain offset from X and Y from the center of the CNC spindle?
Yeah, I haven't gotten that far yet, Paul. But like I said a little earlier, I think that what I'll probably wind up with is some sort of, I'll figure out what that offset is, because it'll be the same every time. And I'll write a little macro or something that moves it.
Just move your workpiece off X.
Well, there's that. But I think, Ed, what you said is exactly what Howard did. I think there was a
just
little
do a
macro
little-
he ran, which
a
then
little bit.
shifted exactly how far the origin would be.
Plus, he also had a little laser crosshair that he used for zeroing things. And then,
When he posted a video on YouTube about how to set that up.
yeah.
Just if anybody's curious.
Yeah, do a little divot and then zero out your X, Y, and then move the laser over to hit the divot, and then that becomes your
Right.
offset.
Right. And the way that Howard did that was once, and then he knew the offset coordinates, and he had a macro that would make that offset whenever he wanted to go from CNC to laser.
Yep.
Got it. Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
Very cool. And you know what
It's going to be neat
to
having that.
Sorry, Doug, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm looking forward to, I think that's a neat combination to have the CNC and the laser, because there's certain things when you're doing, 3D things, I'm not just cutting with the CNC, to be able to go ahead and add the etching finish to it or something, or labeling, or.
Well, you should be able to use the Z-axis from the CNC to do to keep your laser in focus on that same.
Yeah.
Yep.
That might be a feat of programming and stuff, but you should be able. You have all the mechanics to do it.
And actually, Alan, I have seen a video where that was done. So just so anybody who's not familiar is able to understand what we're talking about, the laser stays in focus at a certain distance from the surface of what it's etching on. And if you have a curve going down, you would start at maybe in focus and then lose your focus as you went down. But if the CNC can move it down as it goes along with the laser, you could stay in focus the whole time. And not too long ago, and Alan, I'll try to find it to post to your forum, I saw where they combined these things, and the CNC actually moved the Z-axis so that the laser stayed in focus over a 3D carving. That was pretty cool. I'd never seen that before, but you're right, it's possible.
And there's I can't remember, was it Cloudray or Light Object that built that? So
that was a different one. That was actually
no,
they
that's
actually.
what I'm saying. They actually have one
Right.
for a big laser, and it actually has some logic and sensors built into it, so it knows when to Z up and down the laser head. At I think it was like $5,000 for that, just the attachment to go on to your laser head.
And what it was doing, it was dynamically sensing the distance, and it was adjusting accordingly.
Yeah.
That was a laser-specific solution, where what we're seeing in Ed's setup would be a CNC laser combination. So again, Alan, I'll try to find that video and post it in your forum.
Well,
In
I
addition
have a question.
Yeah.
Ed said that the beam for 8 millimeters stays the same width. So it's basically in focus for that 8 millimeter distance. So as long as you don't have a high rise and drop on your thing, you shouldn't have to worry about
A
that.
little under a third of an inch.
Third of an inch, yeah. So if it's not a real big carving, it wouldn't affect the focus.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Okay.
Of course, then your feeds and speeds will be different than your speeds and power.
Yeah, it's almost as though you need a feed rate that is for the laser and
Different
an
feed.
X and Y feed rate for the laser and a Z feed rate for the CNC. It sounds kind of tricky, like that doesn't sound easy to me. But I mean, obviously people.
Well, the X and Y for the laser is the same as the X and Y for the CNC. I'm connecting to PWM and ground. I'm not connecting anything directional to this thing. It's being run by the CNC stepper motors as always.
I get that, but if I were using, say, LightBurn, it doesn't say anything about Z. It just says
Right.
X and Y.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
But I'm saying, X and Y is going to already be there. All you need to do is add a Z.
right, and I was just saying, I
Yeah.
personally don't know how I would add that in, but you're absolutely right. That's what you have to add.
And-
Maybe when I find that
There-
video, it'll tell us how it was done.
There are some people who can code this stuff up and know how to do this stuff.
Right, but I
I'm
mean,
not
it's
that
obviously not
good.
going to be mainstream if it requires special skills.
I
and
would think
power
that
from
that's coming
engraving.
through, though. It's more and more people are getting CNCs. Laser cutting is becoming more popular. The combination, when you go, okay, I now have this big thing that does X and Y, and that's what the laser does. I got this little laser over here that does X and Y. Why don't I just use the big one?
Yeah.
Because it
That's what I
does
was
it.
thinking.
So, I mean, it just naturally, I think we're going to see more lasers on CNC machines. And I think the software will get there where it can do that topographical, manipulation of the Z while it's cutting and stuff. Or
Let me add one more thought too. I did mention that this was, I think, $840, but I did see as I was doing my research, there are some other lasers out there. There's JTech that's
Oh yeah.
less expensive, but it is, the parts were, a lot of the parts were 3D printed, and it just didn't look like it was as nice as this. And then there are,
How much was that
there
one,
are
Ed?
even some, pardon?
How much was that one? The JTech?
I don't remember, but I think it was under 500.
Okay.
And then there were some some sort of a laser that was, we're talking down in the few $100 range, couple $200 or $300, that didn't come with a kit to attach it. You did all the machining of the parts yourself. But like I said, I wanted something that was kind of turnkey and somebody had figured it all out. So.
Well, that's a classy one. I mean, seriously, very well milled metal, earth magnets to clamp it together. I mean, that's just a classy one. You play.
we'll write the document later.
Yeah, well, so they asked me if I wanted to help them write the manual since I was complaining about there not being one. And I said, sure. And I think they're going to actually, there's some remuneration here. I'll get back some of the paid on this.
Woo!
I think that's a good idea.
Great stuff.
You should. All right. So, anybody else have any great questions for Ed? And we'll find something else to do. We got another 20 minutes here.
Alan, your beard is so white and the light is blowing it out. So you look like you have a radiating beard. Like maybe this
It's
stuff that is
it's all Howard's fault. No, it's Pat's fault, I think.
Pat.
Duffy's.
Oh,
He showed me these the lights that we have on the band saws in the shop,
yeah,
magnetic with a little bar of LEDs on them.
yeah.
It's like I fell in love with them, so now I have them all over everywhere.
Oh.
So when I turn it on so I can see my keyboard,
Yeah.
that's what it does. And now that's just
I can do that too.
yeah. So
Oh, yeah.
now it's just the light from the it's Doug's light from the monitor.
Got it. Wow. Okay.
So the next thing I sort of wanted to go into was my DIY blower project that we talked about last time from Russ's video.
Alan, just because people like Skip haven't been in the meeting before, could you just describe it real briefly?
So Russ, I don't even know what Russ's last name is. This is Russ. He's a YouTube video guy, and he's got a bunch of hours worth of this is how you hack or build more or fix the big blue Chinese lasers, the 40-watt ones, or the 50 watt
50
ones.
watts.
The little bit bigger, not the K40s, the next size up, which is what I have, Travis has, a couple other people. Randy's got the one a little bit bigger than that, but it's basically the same guts. It's a Rudia controller, you know, a CO2 laser. So and he goes through these long videos, and he has like 4 or 5 hacks on each video. And so we all, I don't know where we all got it from. Probably Travis said, hey, look at this. But we were all watching the same one, and then part of that video was on controlling the compressor on your laser with the controller, with the Rudia controller, so that the compressor is only on when the laser program is running. And Russ's idea was it extended the life of the compressor. Alan's idea is it knocks down about 50% of my noise in my shop when I only run the compressor when the laser is actually firing. So in the process, LightRay has picked up his kludged together thing and made it a kit for like 80 something, a little bit shy of $90. And all it is 2 relays and a solenoid valve and a pressure regulator valve and some hose and wire. But then you have to put it together yourself. And how he got it set up was in LightBurn, you can turn the compressor on. It's in one. It's part of the power settings. It says air on. It's at the top right hand side of the power of each layer's power settings.
Right.
It comes default on, so you can turn it off. So some people, I'm not really part of this crowd of people, but some people think you should turn your compressor off or go to a lower power when you etch. I think you just blow the smoke out. So if you were doing etching, you would turn that off, that air output off, and if you have everything hooked up to your controller, it does not turn on your compressor and blow. Well, we just got through talking about what happens when you don't have something blowing. The smoke goes right back up in on your lens. Mm-hmm. So what Russ did was, when the air output is in the off position, what it does, these relays that he's got in there in a combination of off and ons, take the Y gate solenoid, pipe the air to a different hose, and there's a regulator that he's turned down to really, really slow. So it still turns on the compressor, but if you have that air output turned off, it just barely blows. So that keeps your lens clean. Okay, well, I decided I didn't want to go through and repipe the whole world. So the nice people at CloudRay have a parts list, so I just found the part number for the main relay and went and bought one for $9. And then I bought these stupid rails. You have to have these rails. Turn my light back on for a second. I can't see them, it's too bright. Turn it back off. They're these railroad track looking, where's the camera? There it is, rails. It's hard to see. Anyway, so if anybody wants to do this, I have a whole bunch of spare, because you needed 2 inches and I got 2 feet. That was the smallest amount you could buy.
It's a DIN rail. Very common.
Yeah, right.
Control.
So, so for $9 worth of relay, I sort of reversed engineered their schematic, which is not right, but now I've got it figured out. I haven't got my compressor hooked up to it yet, but I do have the I hooked it up to a bunch of voltmeter or ohm meters so that when it worked, I could watch the relay work like it was supposed to and make sure everything worked. The wiring diagram from Cloud Ray is probably for Russ's thing works fine. It does not work the way it looks like it works. So I figured it out. And I'm going to put together the PowerPoint for it so everybody can have that schematic.
Okay.
But so the thing I'm going to do is, instead of having it where it takes the power down half or the compressor to less flow, I'm putting an aquarium pump in parallel with my compressor. So the aquarium air pump will be on all the time. So I'll always have some airflow because those things are not very loud. And then when the program runs, I'll have my compressor up and running and it'll blow.
Cool.
For the high
So
volume
stay tuned,
stuff.
is that right?
Those are the high volume, with the high volume for cutting or I use it for etching too. I don't believe.
I really like that video and I like the hack. I like your hack better than his because I use a real compressor and it's noisy. And I have a regulator at the back of my machine that drops the 120 pounds down to 5 psi right at the back of my machine. But here's the trick. I built a nozzle over my lens and also would have a what I call a tube. This is my air assist tube. So I have a small tube that gets a very high powered, narrow shot of air. Doesn't take a lot of volume, but it shoots it right at the burn point. And I have a tiny little hole between the two so that some of this high powered air leaks into the lens cone and keeps the smoke out of it. But so even when I'm engraving, I need to have my air on, and not all the time. You don't always need. Sometimes I'm doing something very small and I got to stick magnets on and stuff because the air will blow it away.
Or if you try and cut paper or something like that, or sometimes material. So my wife was making COVID masks like crazy lady, and was complaining about how much time it took to cut them out. So I got the pattern and put it into LightBurn. It takes me 16 seconds to cut out 4 masks, or two masks, which are 4 pieces basically. But yeah, it was the same thing. I had to turn the air off so it didn't blow the material around. But if you turn the air off, you take a chance of starting a fire.
Right.
Yep.
That's one of those.
So, yeah.
That's the reason you don't leave your laser while it's firing.
Yeah.
Right.
So I like that air pump idea. I'm gonna probably end up doing that because
you could probably do the same thing with your compressor. You're just going to have a second relay that's bigger to run the compressor. Use the little relay that I've got to control a bigger relay that can handle more amperage.
Well, I don't need to turn the compressor off. The compressor will turn on and off on its own. I just need to turn the air. I just need to turn the air off. And so I'll look at that valve to see whether that controllable valve can go in front of the regulator or after the regulator.
So I didn't use that one, but if you go to Cloud Ray, you can break down they've got a parts breakdown list.
Okay.
And you can look and see what it is. I don't remember. It's a standard relay company like Schneider. It's not Schneider. It's something like that though. That makes relays, and then it's just a solenoid operated valve.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could do the same thing on that.
Yeah, and since I think you guys are using those. They're like an airbrush pump, right?
They're actually they're an aquarium pump, but it's
they are just
it's
a
for
wall
an
of aquariums.
Yeah, it's like the one at the Chinese food restaurant that has a whole freaking seafood thing in it.
Right. Okay.
But,
Yeah. So it makes sense. Just be turning AC power on and off,
right.
and that's what handles that. Yep.
But
All
it
right.
works. I think it's going to work pretty good. So when I get around to it, when I get it done, if anybody needs these rails, I'm going to have rails. You know, I can cut off 2 inches and get it to you some way or another. We can leave it outside the door at the shop or something. Put it in a bush. I don't know. We'll get those, and then
Dead drop.
the relay I got off of Amazon, so I'll put the model number, and then I'll put the link to the Amazon site on my PowerPoint brief for that.
Cool.
So,
Hey, can I ask a question? Because earlier on, Alan, you talked about how you and I have a particular kind of laser, and that Randy had a different one. It's larger. It has a few other characteristics. Randy, does yours have a pass-through slot on front and back, or side and side? So you can put
Side to
larger,
side.
side to side?
Side to side, it has a pass through.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you
Now-
familiar?
now wait. Now ask him if he has room in his shop to use that side.
No, we know from the tour he gave us that he has no room for that. There's walls on either side or obstacles on either side. But Randy, you still need to know about this feature. And Alan, I'll put this in your forum as well.
Yeah.
Alan and I can't use the feature I'm about to talk about. This is a feature in LightBurn. Alan and I don't have a laser where you can pass things through the machine. And the reason you want to pass material through the machine is that right now, Alan and I, for instance, can cut, what, 12 by 20 inches? Is that
Yeah.
about right?
Yeah.
And Randy, you're about, I can't remember your numbers.
20 by 24.
Okay, 20 by 24. So what Alan and I can do is restrict it to a small footprint. And while Randy's footprint is much larger, if he can move material through his machine, if only he could line up the material from one part of a cut to the next using registration marks, then he could cut much larger pieces. And there's a new feature in LightBurn, which I just saw Randy's head go, huh, that sounds like it would be interesting. There's a new feature in LightBurn, which is called cut and, let's see, print and cut. Let me find it here. Print and cut. What this feature does, and Oz, the author of LightBurn, produced a video the other day that describes it. It basically, Randy, allows you to put registration marks on a large piece, and by queuing up those registration marks as you move the material through the laser, it perfectly matches up one cut to the next cut to the next cut. So for instance, Ed might well be able to use something like this as well, where his cutting area currently is 16 by 32. But on a Shapeoko, he can put whatever he wants through it. I mean, it passes front to back and left to right. And so if he wanted to do something larger, it wouldn't be possible unless you could align one etch and cut with the next etch and cut with the next etch and cut. And this feature, print and cut, allows you to set a registration mark, set a second registration mark, and so you can take maybe something that is, let me get rid of my screen sharing here. So you've got something
This
this
uses
long.
the camera. This has to use the camera, right?
Actually, it doesn't. What it does is, if I have something this big, and I can only fit this in my laser, it breaks it into 3 pieces, so that I end up with 3 discrete pieces, and each of them has a little target, a registration mark. And so to connect them, you actually just position the laser over the spot, and you say, this is my left one. You position it on the other side, this is my right one, and it aligns up the 3 cuts. So you end up with one large piece. Again, I'm not doing it justice, but for those who have passed through possibilities like Ed and Randy, this is a really powerful way of taking your laser, which is normally constrained to the bed size, and allowing you to extend it way beyond that. Doug, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of, does it burn the registration marks so that I'm trying to figure out how you would line the registration marks.
I know where you're coming from, Doug, and it took till minute 21 in this video before the light bulb went off, okay? I know where you're coming from. And I won't try to describe it right now, but essentially you have marks that are registration marks on the surface of the material, and the way you connect one cut to the next is when you set up your second cut, you're actually saying this registration mark from the first cut corresponds to this registration mark in the second cut, and it's here and here physically on the material, and it lines up. It's just a great feature, useless to Alan and me, but potentially really valuable to Randy and Ed, since they can pass larger pieces of material through their laser. And Alan, I will put the link to the video in your forum, okay?
Cool. Yeah, sounds good.
Do you guys still have the links for the cooling water flow meter hack?
That's Alan's, right?
Lasers?
Alan, do you have a
That
resource
twirly
for that?
twirly flow meter thing that the visual flow meter.
Did we put it up last time?
I've
Whirly
been
whirly.
looking on the forum, and I haven't seen something pertinent to the flow meter. I see the current meter for the tube, but I haven't seen a flow meter.
Okay, yeah, I'll find one. I just bought another one. So
Thank you.
Can we go back to Doug for just a second? Doug, what did you call this thing?
Oh, I call it twirly whirly visual flow meter.
Love it.
So the new one I got is twirly whirly because it's got, instead of having a wagon's wheel spokes, it's sort of tornado looking.
Oh, so it's going to hypnotize you.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. As soon as the water hits it, it's just a red blur anyway.
Okay.
Yeah,
I saw yours spinning quite fast.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that one's the red spokey one. So
it's an important red blur.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
$100 red blur.
Yeah. So the other thing, actually that was about a $500 red blur.
For those who don't know, Alan's tube burst because it wasn't being cooled, and that's why it was so expensive. It wasn't being cooled because water to cool it wasn't flowing, but Alan didn't know. So this flow meter allows him to visually see that water is flowing through his tube to keep it cool.
And that's why I'm a big proponent of amp meters or milliamp meters and twirly whirly window water flow things. So the other thing that if anybody needs, I bought a gazillion of, because that's the smallest amount that you can get through Amazon. If you need the connectors that go onto controller boards, not the green ones like Rudia uses, but the white ones like the Gerbil controllers use, I have like 200 pairs of those things. I've got 3 pins, 4 pins, 5 pins, and 6 pins because I picked up a K40 the other day for $150.
Oh yeah, how'd that go?
Really good. I got all brand new mirrors, all brand new, and a brand new lens for it. Still in the paper. The pump, a big, huge fan, like the one on the big green monster we have at the shop. Remember that green fan?
Yeah.
I got one of those.
Wow.
It'll suck the insides out of a K40.
That's like worth $100 right there.
Yeah. It's huge. And
so Alan, I know you've connected up with Pat, who worked on the shop's K40, but do you know where we got all of our K40 knowledge from?
No. YouTube?
He's on this call.
Oh.
It's Doug. Doug's
So-
the one that we turn to learn a lot about the K40.
So
One
I
more resource for you.
watched the. Oh, but the cool thing, Doug, that this does have, this K40, that I have never seen in my whole life and would not have dreamed of doing myself. The guy cut the air thing on the back so he has a bigger area and took that piece of sheet metal out. He went and got a Toyota radiator and cut it so it was perfectly the right size. So instead of having honeycomb, I have a Toyota radiator in my laser.
Oh, for the cutting bed.
For the bed, yeah, because it's perfectly flat. It's got airflow through it. I would have never thought of that in 100 years.
Yeah, on edge.
Probably with good
little
reason.
fins.
Probably with good
Yeah.
reason, Alan.
And they're black
Yeah.
usually, so it's
I don't know how long it's going to stay in there, but it's there for right now.
Yeah.
And I went out and bought I didn't get a Cohesion 3D board because I didn't want to spend $300 or $200, whatever it was. So I got the Smart T or Smart something or other, which is the same board with the white connectors instead of the green connectors, basically.
Yeah, Doug didn't get the cohesion either. What did you get, Doug?
So
It was a
basically,
smoothie board, right?
pardon me?
It was a smoothie board.
Well, they're all smoothie compatible. They
Okay.
run SmoothieWare
Yeah.
for the most part. But no, this was a Chinese knockoff called the MKS Base board. It was
Yeah.
basically, and the cool part about it for this, I mean, it was $50, I think, with a graphic display and the board.
Wow.
And the only thing that I had to do was on the K40, there's a 3-pin, or at least my K40, there's 3 pins for the end stops, ground, and then X and Y. But on the smoothie board, there's the end stops on 3D printers are usually two double header, two things. So I just made an adapter. So it
this one
goes
has
3 to 2.
Yeah, mine has that ribbon cable that goes to the synchro. So this one doesn't. The controller board doesn't have that. But I ordered you can buy a little.
Breakout.
So yeah, it's a little sub PC board with the connector on it, and then it has soldering points on the other side. And then I'm
Okay.
just going to put whatever connectors I need to plug into the white things.
Yeah, that's the neat thing. My K40 is just all individual or regular wires. But yeah, that is the advantage of the cohesion.
So that's the same. So I watched the same video that I think Pat Duffy made, where he drilled through the ribbon cable to put the controller. Didn't he drill through the ribbon cable there, Travis?
I don't remember.
Or he melted it or something. Anyway.
Yeah, there was some error, some mistake he made that he had to recover from.
Yeah, but it's not his mistake. It's a very common mistake from where that's. I mean, I watched 2 different YouTube videos on the one guy literally was putting and I think that's the same thing Pat was doing, was drilling a hole in the front so they could put the little the medical leveling table thing in, and that
Okay, yeah.
that ribbon cable lays right in the front of the laser, and the people just drill right through it.
Right.
So I'm going to try and not make that mistake. But I got all the pieces now except for I want to put quick disconnects in the water, but that may come later, like the one we have in the shop. Pat sent me the thing, but those stupid quick disconnects are like $22 a set, and you got to have 2 sets. By the time I buy those, I've almost bought my laser. So.
Yeah.
What would you do about purging air from cooling lines?
The pump does it pretty much by itself.
Okay.
What some people have recommended, because sometimes you will get air trapped in your tube, depending on how the outlet is. And what some people have basically said is generally if air is trapped because your tube is horizontal and your output is horizontal, right? Then there's a little part at the top of the tube that can trap the air. All you have to do is just turn your tube a little bit so that it comes up at an angle, and then the air will just find its way out. And
So basically, the bubbles find their way to the top and therefore out.
yep.
Okay. Yeah.
And if you put a little whirly twirly thing that's above your tube, that air goes up that way too.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, Alan, before you end, can I make a plug for a few things?
Sure. Plug away, sir.
Just real briefly, folks, I personally really enjoy special interest groups, and Alan runs the laser group. You may not know it, but the CNC special interest group is run by Ed, who had to drop off, but his is next Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Tomorrow, Saturday morning at 10 a.m., we have the hand tools SIG. I don't remember what the topic was, but this time it's a guest speaker. This is where you strip away computers and you strip away power, and it's just hand tools. And I personally come from the computer perspective, but I really appreciate the passion that Paul feels for the topic, and I learn something every single time. I also wanted to tell you that we, as SDFWA members, have the opportunity to participate in the San Diego Wood Turners regular meeting. And next Saturday, they have a session, and by the way, they have excellent sessions. They're equivalent to our general meetings, but often focus on turning, wood turning, lathe type work. However, last time was Mr. Bandsaw. What a phenomenal presentation. The guy,
Yeah, he was good.
He was very good.
And I'm afraid of those things. So
yeah, and he did a great job. This coming one, not tomorrow, where tomorrow is the hand tool SIG at 10 a.m. Next Saturday, we have the CNC SIG, but starting an hour before that at 9 a.m. is the San Diego Wood Turners presentation. This is going to be a guy by the name of Art Leastman, and he's going to be talking about turning objects, but then how to char them. He has techniques for getting char without burning it too much, but getting a great effect. And it's a niche kind of woodworking technique, but it sounds kind of interesting. And so that's another something that's coming up later in the month.
Put a laser on it?
Yeah, you could do that, right? But this is actually charring the whole surface. And then on the 30th of September, we have our general meeting with the association, the San Diego Fine Woodworkers. And we have a guy who is on the speaking circuit usually. We found that we can tap into these guys who are great presenters because they can't present right now. So for the small fee that we're willing to pay, we're able to get them to come in and do a Zoom session. So much like Alex Snodgrass did for the Turners, he's Mr. Bandsaw. Much like George Von Driska, who we had before that, who's an incredible presenter on just woodworking in general. We have a guy who's going to be coming in and talking about coloring wood, using dyes in wood. His name is Roland Johnson. And again, he's on the normal speaking circuit, but because he can't be speaking anywhere since all those events are shut down, we're able to tap into him and at a very reasonable rate. So those are just a few things coming up. And I bring them up now because if you're into lasers, you might not really think to consider a CNC special interest group. Or, oh, certainly wouldn't consider something that didn't use power, like hand tools. But as a guy who comes from the computer power tools world, I find that the hand tools SIG has been fantastic. I've ended up learning how to sharpen tools, learn to use things like hand planes, and just a variety of other hand tools, which otherwise I would have been pretty ignorant of. And all these things are available on Zoom, and you can find out about all of them in the punch pass system that we use for the shop. I just wanted to get those out there as a small advertisement, Alan, in the midst of your SIG. Didn't want to take up too much time, but I wanted people to know about those options.
yeah, that's cool. I've gone to the Turner. I went to the bandsaw one, and I went to the Turner, the guy before that, and they were both really good.
Really good.
And the disclaimer on the Turner stuff is if you're a member of the Turners group, that club, their membership is really expensive, and they usually charge for these different speakers coming in. So that's the way they pay for the speakers. So, and now we have the benefit of allowing them to be part of our Zoom classroom, whatever thing, and getting the benefit of being able to see these for no membership fee.
Yeah. And Alan, just as since you're talking about cooperation between ourselves and the Turners, I've been talking with some groups, and in particular, there's this one in Seattle called the Bainbridge Island Artisans Network. They have a pretty big laser group, and they've said that they'd like to do some back and forth with us. And so if you have an agenda sometime when you think that it might be particularly interesting for another group, we can get an invitation out to them and add them to our Zoom session. They're quite interested in doing that sort of a thing. So your judgment call on when you think that would be right.
I think if they have monthly meetings, maybe we drop ours to one SIG a month and make the other one theirs. Like we invite them to ours and us to theirs, or
Maybe
something.
we should get you on a call with them or a Zoom session and just have that conversation.
Not until after the 1st of October.
It's a deal.
Yeah, that is a good group up there. They have a new building that for a lot of artisan endeavors at Bainbridge. It's a beautiful area up there. I lived up there for a year and a half. So anything that we can do to support their efforts and have common endeavors would be is a good thing.
Yeah, they do everything from jewelry to woodworking to electronics. They do a whole bunch of things, but woodworking is, as they tell me, about half of what their activity is based around.
Yeah,
I think if we can find some other laser groups to be part of the Zoom meetings, I think that's a great idea, because it just expands our knowledge, and then we can also share who's going to do a presentation.
Yep, absolutely. So Alan, I'll follow up with you separately, as well as putting the two things into your forum. One, which was the video from LightBurn on how to do the print and cut feature. And the other one, if I can find it, which was the laser etching on a CNC, where it also varied Z. So you stayed in focus as the surface of the wood changed.
And I'll see if I can find my water whirly wheelie gig thing.
Yeah,
and
I'm really wondering what it is that Randy's supposed to do as a follow-up. I mean, come on, Randy, what is it you're doing for a follow-up? Good enough. Good enough.
Can I mention something? Travis, you mentioned that there's a SIG where there's going to be a presenter talking about staining or coloring wood.
Coloring wood, yes. Yes.
I don't know if you guys saw the tile that I posted that somebody
Oh my
did.
God, that was amazing.
So, I think I showed you the white tiles. I showed you the white tiles that I've done and the stuff on it. Well, some guys have taken that to the next level. I don't know, maybe they remember as a kid taking crayon and coloring layers and scratching stuff off. But what they did was they took white tile, this one example, they took a white tile, painted bright green paint on it, and then let that dry, and then they painted black on it. And then they etched a picture of Frankenstein's face, and it just goes deep enough to pull the black off and expose the green. And in a few places, like the whites of the eye and a few other places, they add a little bit more power, and it goes right down to the white. And you end up with a multicolored image on a tile that looks fantastic.
And
So
Doug, I'm going to share it with people right now because I have to do
okay.
content.
Yeah, so that was really cool. But I remember down at the Fab Lab.
Oh, wow.
So down at the Fab Lab, I remember somebody had put some lacquer finish on a sign, and then they laser cut it and they etched it and, you know, made their sign. But what was so cool was that the cutting didn't go right to black and all the way through. What it did was it went down through and changed the color. It went down like the lacquer, something, it just really had a cool two-color effect that was neither the lacquer color itself nor the wood color, but it was in between. So that might be some fun stuff to work with the laser on wood.
And if I remember right,
Treatments.
Doug, this is basically the same technique that Alan had showed us earlier, I think 2 sessions ago, where you had white tile, Alan, and you spray painted, I think, a very thin layer of white paint on it, and then you did the etching, and that picture of the baby was just so
But that's
phenomenal.
that's forcing the what I did forced the white paint into the porcelain, where what looks like what they did is just taking the paint off. They're just using the tile as a they could have used wood if they'd wanted to, and they're just taking different layers of the paint off. You're still going to have, if you scratched it, you would still go all the way back down to the.
Yeah, they do go ahead and put a clear finish on top of this.
But Doug, is the tile green? Is that why we're
No,
basically slowly revealing different amounts of green?
No, the tile's white.
White.
And if you look at some of the area, you can see the white where they burn down far enough so it goes through the black and the green, and you see the lighter color in there.
Okay.
So yeah, and it's, I would guess that's there's a bit of time in calibrating your speeds or your powers.
Power and speed, yeah, to get that where it only takes off one layer of paint.
Yep.
Yeah, that's close. So, hey, before we close off, though, and talk about that, I wanted to show you guys, if you want to start doing some more or some Christmas stuff, where's my screen share thing? There it is. Where'd it go? Can I share? Where'd my screen share go?
Actually, can I just show something before you do that, Alan?
Go ahead. You disabled me anyway.
I'm sorry. I will re-enable you in just a second. I just wanted to share with people what you had done earlier. It is, let me see if I can zoom. I want to share a screen. This is the earlier version. We just saw Frankenstein from Doug. Now we're seeing the baby from Alan. And the fact that this was done on a laser. Alan, you're muted.
There you go. That is actually in the tile. You can do whatever you want. You can't get that picture off of the tile unless you break it.
And,
Yeah,
and Doug is showing us something. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, this was one of my test pieces, and yeah, that's it. You can't scratch this off. It embeds right into the.
Yeah,
That's
it has something to do with the paint reacting with the laser and the gloss coat on the tile.
Okay.
And I found out yellow paint doesn't work the same as white. I tried yellow. It just doesn't react the same way. I don't know why.
Travis, can you go to the Fine Woodworkers Association forum, my recent post about the tiles?
Yeah, sure.
I linked to my original post on the tiles, and it actually shows you the two tiles with two different paints, and just the two different white paints, what the effect was, how one gave quite a lot more contrast than the other. So just like Alan was saying, the yellow didn't do much.
This is what you're talking about?
Yeah, there's another picture there that shows two tiles. There we go. So that was the same design, basically same powers, same speeds. Only thing changed was the paint.
Well, the contrast on the right is much better.
Right, and that's the one that I ended up using to make my pictures, and that was that
That's
was
great.
just paint plus primer. That happened to be this Rust-Oleum one. Worked just, I mean, the black is really black, and you still get the contrast.
That's good.
And the other
Boy,
one
what
was,
a difference between the two in terms of results.
Yeah, and I think it's partly just the chemical composition. It's like that molychromium stuff
Right.
right,
spray on metal.
metal.
It's just the way it reacts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So,
Alan, you're welcome to share the screen now if you like.
okay, thank you, Mr. Screen Thief. There. So, if anybody wants, oh, what's that? I don't know what that is. Okay.
The only thing I like about this guy, Alan, is his last name.
Yeah. So, I realize this is a scroll saw. This is my terrible plug, but Steve Good has started putting up his Christmas ornaments. But the reason I really wanted to show you this is see these 6 he has here. He actually at Christmas time he charges for these, and you have to buy 5 of these, and you have to buy at least 2 of these. These are $1 a piece up here. These are $2 a piece. So for $4, you get a dog and a cat, and they'll put your dog and cat's name in there.
But Alan, for those who are new to laser, and at least one person on this call only took the laser class today, can you describe what you get from here and how you can use it? Because it's just a scroll saw site.
Right. It is a scroll saw site, but Steve uses, I think he uses Corel Draw, but whatever he uses to make his patterns, he makes them into PDFs after that. And LightBurn takes those PDFs and makes them into SV or LightBurn files very easily now if you have 9.16. But he does ask if you get the other ones, you get his normal ones, and he's got 3,000, I think. It doesn't say here. I think he's got 3,000 patterns that you can use. But the ones down here, he asks that, you don't go in and change, but I changed them anyway. I don't like this. Well, because this is how he funds his website for the year.
Sure.
With this. So some people were they were going and getting his pattern, then they were taking it into back into Corel Draw or whatever, and then just changing the names and start pumping them out and selling them.
Right.
And he wasn't getting any credit for the patterns. But what I do is I buy his patterns every year, because you won't ever after December you can't get this pattern ever again. He doesn't put them back up anywhere. But I take this part right here where it says Patty, I take that out usually with LightBurn, and then I'll put in Patty, but I'll etch it in, and you can put in different fonts and make it look a lot prettier. I think it's hard. It would be hard.
Prettier is the name of the game, right, Alan?
Do what?
Prettier is the name of the game.
Prettier is the
Yeah.
name of the game. So this is his website. It's Steve Good. That's why Travis likes it so well. Saw Workshop. Matter of fact, what's this? This I will put back down here in.
You guys want to see something weird?
Yeah. Your green screen.
Yeah. I'm just moving a
I was
folder
going
of
to say
green
Travis
screen
was
around.
weird, but yeah.
Okay. So I put, if you look in the chat, I put the link to Steve's website so you can go in and get those. And if you ever go into the shop, they're on both of the computers for the lasers also. There's a file in there that says, I think it says Steve Good scroll saw or something on them. But there's like 2,500 patterns on there.
It's a really great resource for anybody who's looking for something to start with. A good design done by a pro that if they're new to lasers or want to modify something with a good starting point, Steve does great work. And I'm pretty sure, based on all the exposure that I've been given to Steve Good through Alan Lewis, that there's a commission or kickback or something that's happening there. I'm not sure what it is, but there's got to be something.
Never.
Never.
He supports our club when we want to do stuff. We we asked him, you know, hey, can we do 1 million of these or something for the fair? Can I use them at the fair? Can I use them here? Can you? He's always sure. Just, you know, don't sell it. Don't sell my patterns. That's all he asks. Don't sell my pattern.
Got it.
So, all right. I think it's about 8:30-ish almost.
Yep.
Does anybody have anything cool that they wanted one last shot in? All right. Well, Travis, call me tomorrow sometime. Not between 9 and 10 because of my scroll saw meeting is zooming then. But and we'll talk about the other laser group.
Sounds good, sir.
Let's get
All
that
right.
going.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
See everybody later.
Thank you, Alan.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night, all.